Hello, everyone. I am excited to try this out. It's something that I've been thinking about for the last couple of months. Honestly, since I started the program, since I started changing the channel, it's been something that I kind of wanted to get into. I think what I want to call it for right now is Shortchanged. These will be short little clips about just stuff that I find fascinating, ideas that I've come across, and just kind of sharing them with people and seeing, I'd love to get some engagement from these as well. So I'm going to try to keep these videos between maybe 10 and 15 or 20 minutes, just short little digestible clips that you can catch on to. Try them out, see what you think. Again, leave me some feedback wherever you're listening to this, whether it's YouTube or Substack or you're on Spotify. Would love to hear. Leave me a comment, send me a message, or shoot me an email. That's the best place. Shoot me an email at joe@joegarner.net, and would love to kind of hear your perspective, hear some feedback, and if it sparks something new, let me know. So today, I really wanted to just kind of talk about this idea of the shift in consciousness, the kind of how I see it playing out, how I see different um, data points that are pointing me towards this kind of shift that's happening, and maybe even get into a little bit of the idea behind, the light and the dark and finding that balance between those two as we kind of move through this shift, as we move through this perspective. So the shift in consciousness, again, these are ideas that have been brought up from Dolores Cannon, from back in the 1920s. There were a number of channelers who kind of talked about this idea of a shift coming to the planet. People talk about this in kind of the change from Kali Yuga to Satya Yuga. All these old messages, these old ideas have kind of brought us to this point where the human species is making this transition. Again, I've mentioned it before, but I think it bears repeating that it also seems to do with our location as the sun moves around the galaxy. It kind of has this up and down wave, the synodic wave, as it circles the central sun black hole of the Milky Way galaxy. It moves up and down kind of in a wave pattern. And as it kind of comes into the central plane of the galaxy, it does seem to pick up more energy. There's more energy available for the species that exist on the planet at that time. So as we're moving into this space, again, if you're looking at the Schumann resonance, or you're looking at the solar flares, the solar energy coming from the sun, there's all these different anomalies, all these different upticks in activity that seem to be coming through. And I think that's attributable to, and it kind of makes sense that there's the solar system is connected to the galaxy, the central galaxy, that as energy kind of emanates out through this plane of the center of the galaxy, that as the sun comes into that, just as, like as the northern hemisphere moves or is tilted towards the sun, it picks up more energy. That's what we call summer. When it's tilted away from the sun, that's less energy. That's what we call winter. So it's kind of like a summer on a galactic scale, or on a solar system scale, just kind of moving into this. Again, I think there's a lot of evidence, a lot of data that kind of shows that we're moving towards this. But I'm also very open to the idea that this is just a very short period in humanity. I'm open to that idea as well. But as I look around, as I see, as I take in different perspectives, different ideas, different perceptions of what's going on, it does seem to lead me to believe that there is this fundamental shift in consciousness, and that shift in consciousness is being brought about by the increase in the energy, the frequencies, the waves that are hitting the planet, that are coming from the sun, that are being projected from the central sun of the galaxy, the black hole of the galaxy, however you want to kind of put that into perspective. And that's one thing that Nassim Haramein kind of talks about in his studies, is that at the center of every sun, at the center of the galaxy, there's what we would call this bright circular sun, or a mass of hundreds of thousands, if not millions of suns at the center of the galaxy. But at the very center of that, there's this gigantic black hole. Just as he's kind of hypothesized that there's a black hole in the center of every neutron, proton, and electron. It's just kind of like a fundamental building block of how things get built in the physical reality. So coming back to this, let's call it summertime, what typically seems to happen as species move through this summertime, this heightened increase in energy that's available to them, their body adapts. They go through this evolutionary process that allows them to have these abilities. Let's call them abilities. We'll call them sixth senses. They start to become more and more prominent. And there's, in my journey, I've gone through a whole number of different ways of viewing this. Kind of at the very beginning, the first time I think I had like a channeling experience where I felt like I was communicating with something outside of my body. There was a deeply religious and spiritual aspect that came about that. So I think what happened was I had this mentality of religion and spirituality, which I'd known before having this experience. And then when I had that experience, my mind created the idea or the story that this was a spiritual or religious experience, that I was communicating with something. Let's call it God, we'll call it the universe, whatever it ends up being. Now I kind of understand that it's probably just a part of my soul. It's a portion of my soul that is not incarnated in the physical realm. It's a part of my higher self, as they say in the Vedas, and kind of the Buddhist perspective is that what's incarnated in your human form is just a fraction of the totality of who you truly are. And if you run that all the way to the end, you get to the point where you are everything. You are a fractal piece of everything that is in existence. You're a piece of the entirety of the universe, and you are just playing this piece. You're just playing this part of not knowing that you are the totality of the universe. And arguably, that's why you come here. That's why you go through these experiences. So, going back, Dolores Cannon, she talks a whole bunch about this. If you ever want to read up on any of these, check out some of her books, The First Wave. That kind of gives you an outline of what is potentially happening. And if you're not familiar with Dolores Cannon, she founded or made famous this idea of quantum healing hypnosis therapy and QHHT. Essentially, she was a hypnotist, and she used, during her hypnotic experiences, she found that oftentimes the people that were hypnotized ended up having these memories bleeding through. Sometimes they remembered having the experience of it, sometimes they didn't. But essentially what was happening was in this hypnotic state, in the, typically theta brainwave or theta alpha or even gamma possibly, um, they were having these deep experiences of knowing that were just passing through their body. And what she found was there was this pattern of stories of, I'm here to help with this shift in consciousness, to help with the um, evolution of the human species, to be a way shower or just a person that is capable of bringing on higher energy inside of their body that would allow them to evolve so that they could create this evolutionary process inside of them. And this was a fascinating exploration, and again, very well documented. There's documents. There are documentaries on this and what she is talking about. And again, I think that at many levels of government, of secret projects, that people know that this is a possibility, that this is a thing, that this is what is happening on the planet, and they've embraced it. They've kind of embraced this idea that the human species is capable of this evolutionary process, and that the human species is going through this evolutionary process. So I think that is just a little background, just like a basic idea of where I think we are right now, that people everywhere on the planet are having these experiences, that they're framing it in whatever reference point that they have. So if they're from a religious background, that they are framing it in a religious, I'm having this communication with God. When I pray, my prayers come true, more so than they have before. Again, I think scientifically that is the case when you align your consciousness with your higher power, or your, higher self, or this information, we'll call it intuition, that's flowing through your body. When you align intuitive thinking plus mindset plus belief, then it almost has to come true. This is how the universe is set up, is that what you believe becomes your reality. So, if it's a religious perspective, then you've got that belief in prayer that becomes true. If it's a spiritual perspective, then you have this belief that you are communicating with the universe flows through you, and that you are manifesting things into the reality. And again, I think both are very important. I'm not here to say one is better than the other. I'm not making any claim that spirituality, religion, or kind of what I would consider the middle path, which is consciousness, the realization that at a fundamental level, everything that exists has a wave or a pattern of consciousness within it, and that consciousness is what is experiencing everything in the universe. And as you follow that consciousness all the way back from its fractalized pieces of forgetting that it was ever the totality of the consciousness of the universe, to all the way back to these, high level beings, and eventually back to the totality of the consciousness, the universe, God. I've heard it so many different ways, so many different people. There's a gentleman named Cliff High, and he calls it the ontology, which I think is a pretty fascinating term. He comes from a background in kind of quantum mechanics, and has done has worked on quantum computers, computing. He's done a whole bunch of different things throughout his life, and he calls it the ontology. It's the the idea of what thought is. So again, whatever you call it, ontology, God, the universe, consciousness, whatever that thing is, I think we're all describing the same thing. And I think that's the most important point, is that we're all describing the same thing. So as we move through this evolutionary process, can we put down our personal perspectives? Can we let go of our beliefs that if this is true, then this has to be false, that many things can be true all at the same time, all describing the same thing, just from different perspectives, different backgrounds, different societal experiences, and move towards this idea that what we're describing is fundamentally all the same. The Buddhists, the Hindus, the Jews, Catholics, Christians, followers of Islam, the spiritualists, all the different groups and personas from there, people who believe in aliens and extraterrestrials and interdimensional beings. Again, we're all just, we're putting stories around this idea that there are fundamental levels to reality, that we exist in a certain level of reality, and we can have access to other dimensions, other levels of reality. We can go all the way up to God. We can commune with God. We can commune with the universe. And in my experience with psychedelics, with deep meditation, with sound therapy, all of these things can get you to that awareness. But then you come back to the human body and you have to realize and remember that you're having this human experience. So what do you do with this information? What do you do with this information that you are capable of accessing the intelligences of the universe? Well, I think it's very clear. Like, you do the best with what you have. You do the most good for the most people that you possibly can. You share your perspectives and your ideas without the need to change people. You just share them. Just as I'm sharing these ideas, I don't expect people to come around. Nobody's had my experiences in life. Nobody has had the life experiences that I have experienced in my 37 years on the planet. So how could I expect you to have the same belief system as me? All I'm saying is that we're all saying the same thing. So can we let go of this need to, I'm right, you're wrong, this is the way that it is, this is not the way that it is, and just realize how beautiful it is that we live in this tapestry of ideas and information. And let that sink into your soul. Let that sink into your resonance. Because that's the key. This is the key for this evolution. If it's going to happen in a peaceful, gentle way, we just have to accept each other for who they are and where they come from, and the lenses that they have and the belief systems that they have. That there is no right or wrong per se. That the universe, that God has not said this is right and this is wrong. Maybe there have been beings from other places, other dimensions, other times on the planet that have said this is right and this is wrong. But is that truth? Is that capital T truth? Is that what is really happening? So I think the main point today was just to come on and say, just be human. Just be a human. Be a good human. Enjoy life. It can be difficult, but just enjoy it. Live it. Feel it. Feel the consciousness. Feel God. Feel the universe. Feel everything inside of you. Take time to make those connections back to your highest self, your most perfected self, the totality of the consciousness in the universe. Take time to make those connections back. And then just be your human self. Be that person. So I appreciate you listening. I hope to keep these going. Well, I'm going to keep these going. If you enjoyed this conversation, please leave a comment. Let me know. If you want to hear perspectives, if you want to deep dive in something, I really want this to kind of be a two-way street. I would highly recommend either shooting me an email or follow my Substack. I think that's where I'm gonna be putting a lot of these videos, having interactions, kind of building a little bit of a community around that. Because I think at the end of the day, the Substack, it's the best system that I've found so far to have these intimate conversations, to be able to share information. But obviously, if you come across this on YouTube, on um, Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, continue to listen, continue to enjoy there. But yeah, just recommend check out the Substack. It's what is the Substack? Let's check it out. Yeah, it's joegarner.substack.com. You can find that. I'll make sure there's a link down here, but it's called Evolution Update. It's just some musings on what's going on. So again, really appreciate y'all tuning in, and until next time.